Good afternoon. Glad you're able to join us on Newsfeed. Plenty to come this afternoon. You've been watching that briefing by opposition parties. I should say most opposition parties, but not all opposition parties. They've been outlining the action they want to take to put more pressure on Cyril Ramaphosa over the Phala Phala affair. You'll remember, of course, the foreign currency in US dollars that was stolen from his farm. It all came to light because of the actions of the former spy boss, Arthur Fraser. But is this going to work? Why are opposition parties working together? Are some perhaps working, how do I put this, more closely together than others? Lukhanyo Calata is a person we turn to in moments like this. He's our politics editor. Lukhanyo, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I've got to tell you, I mean, the echoes of 2017, right? The Get Zuma Out campaign, whatever we want to call it. We had opposition parties working together then. The environment is slightly different now, but we see similar parties all not quite holding hands in protest, but getting closer to it.
I think opposition parties, the only time they are able to unite is around on issues of getting the ANC, or at least the ANC president, or obviously then the president of the country out of office. Very rarely do we see them standing together on issues, for instance, such as high fuel prices or you know, just other societal issues. But I think once it comes to getting the president of the country or president of the ANC out of the country, then we see opposition parties unite. Will they be successful? Well, that remains to be seen. But, I mean, we saw over the Jacob Zuma years, many times opposition parties had come together to ask for a motion of no confidence. You know, the Speaker grants it. There's a vote. The ANC wins ultimately.
I mean, the various promises made. Julius Malema was talking today, and in fact, he made the point that there'll be a picket outside the Public Protector's office over this.
We will, as opposition political parties, will engage in a picket to the office of the Public Protector on the 9th of September 2022 to demand the immediate release of the report on the violation of the Executive Ethics Code, because the Executive Ethics Code Act prescribes that the reports on investigation must be released within 30 days. We as political parties are concerned that it has been more than 70 days since the Phala Phala violation were reported to the police, and all the responsible institutions, including the South African Reserve Bank, South African Revenue Services, the South African Police Services, Hawks, and the Financial Intelligence Center, have deliberately ignored the parliamentary questions and seemingly involved in the cover-up to shield the sitting president.
Interesting to see. So we're going to have opposition parties protesting together under an office that's actually under quite a lot of pressure, the acting Public Protector.
Yeah, no, the office of the Public Protector is coming a little bit under pressure on this issue of Phala Phala. Remember, yesterday, the suspended Public Protector, Busisiwe Mkhwebane, what happened was that the Legal Advisory Office of Parliament informed the Section 194 committee that, listen, you cannot, or you should not invite President Cyril Ramaphosa to come and answer on his suspension to this committee. So there was a little bit of pressure. It seems that the legal office has kind of relieved some of that pressure on Cyril Ramaphosa to come and answer at least. But Busisiwe Mkhwebane, and now it seems her acting or her successor, they're all coming under pressure, and all of it relates to Phala Phala. So we'll see how much of support the EFF can actually lead, I think on the 9th of September, to the Office of the Public Protector to go and demand actually that she releases this report. And then obviously we're very interested as to see as to what the Public Protector makes of some of the alleged violations of the Executive Ethics Act by the President.
There's really only one question that matters, which is, did the President break the law or Reserve Bank regulations by not disclosing that he had this US currency in cash and keeping it on his farm? That's the crisp issue. I mean, nothing else matters here.
Yeah.
And we do not have any of the people who can make that determination. The National Prosecuting Authority or the South African Reserve Bank giving any comment at all.
SARS as well.
Yes, of course.
SARS is actually quite critical in this because obviously if there is money, we would like to then know whether or not the president had in fact declared any of it, or was there any speech around him paying tax on that money that was allegedly found on his farm. So I'm surprised that by now none of these entities have actually come out and said something, because I think had any of them done so, it would have kind of alleviated some of the pressure that is on the president, and it would have filled some of the vacuum that exists around the Phala Phala matter, because no one is saying anything. So people are then just filling the gaps by themselves because the people involved aren't saying anything.
It's very interesting, and I'm fascinated by the sort of political choreography of what happens with the various political parties who all represent different constituencies, and as you say, they're united by one thing, which is actually the ANC. And Bantu Holomisa, the leader of the UDM, he was talking today.
We need to look at from now on. We endorse the statement, we are part of it, we are part of this program. But we need to focus on the office of the Speaker in Parliament. And I would appeal to the media to watch the process from now on, because the independent panel we have been given up until beginning of September to submit names. We hope that she will speed up the process. We don't expect her to apply delaying tactics and appoint this panel maybe in January. This matter is very, very urgent.
It's interesting to watch. You've got Bantu Holomisa. I forget the exact number, but the UDM's declined in support over the years. You have Newzroom Afrika, again, I forget the exact number, but declined in support over the last few years. I think they got one seat in Joburg in the local elections. The point I'm trying to make here is that both of these sort of, maybe an unfortunate phase, but grand old men of South African politics, this is a big moment for them in a way. Could be the last one.
It most likely is the last one. I think yesterday, William Adisha, the Deputy President of COPE, gave us a State of the Organization report. And, I mean, what he said there was not glowing at all about COPE. So I do expect that after the 2024 elections, there will no longer be a party called Congress of the People represented in the National Assembly, unfortunately. Similarly, the UDM, they've had declining numbers over the years. I think now they only have got 2 seats in the National Assembly. So, again, it will be interesting to see if they come back after 2024. But interestingly, as part of that press briefing earlier, they did say that this independent panel that they are obviously working on now, these opposition parties will nominate, among others, former Chief Justice Mogoeng, former Constitutional Court Justices Yvonne Mogoro, Bernard Mwepe, and Dikgang Moseneke to lead this independent panel. So they are taking it very, very seriously. Remember, the independent panel will have to investigate whether or not there is prima facie evidence that President Cyril Ramaphosa committed a crime. If they find that there is evidence, they will then make a recommendation to the National Assembly Speaker to then set up a committee, a Section 8-9 committee, that will then look at a process to remove the President from office. We don't call it an impeachment in South Africa, but the essence is the same.
Our politics is a complicated space. I don't need to tell you that. So those are heavyweight legal names. There may be a wrinkle around the former Chief Justice Mogoeng, because on Twitter is a video of him saying that he will run for president. I think the party is called the All Africa Alliance. Yeah. That would probably lead to, wait for it, a legal challenge to him being on the panel.
Yes, there would. Look, and of course there would be a conflict of interest were he to then decide to accept the nomination and sit as the head of this panel. So, of course, I mean, I can just imagine the kind of legal challenges that would flow from the African National Congress, obviously, in defense of the president, but also to say that Mogoeng would obviously have some kind of bias in ensuring that the seat is vacant, which gives him a run, obviously, a better run, I suppose, in 2024.
There's a lot of politics going on here. A point made by Newzroom Afrika, the leader of COPE today. He said that members of parliament must be held accountable.
It saddens us very much when we see from time to time communities without food, communities without water. Promises made by some of our core participants in Parliament who don't care what happens to these people. We now want to place it on record. We will not allow for this kind of practice to continue now that you, the people, have voted for us to be in power. And we will do everything in our power to ensure that the government that you put in power is able to fulfill its promises of democracy.
It's interesting to watch all the opposition parties working together or pretending to. I say pretending to because they often have an interest in sort of taking the votes of each other's constituencies. There's an election in 2024, unless anyone's forgotten. We see Action SA and the DA sort of at each other's throats in Swane, even though they're members of the same coalition. That was yesterday's big sort of political story. Neither of those parties are there. And I would hazard a guess to suggest that the DA doesn't necessarily want to share the stage with other political parties. Action SA are not there because they're not represented in Parliament yet. But there's still interesting choreography around how the parties need to manage this.
Well, look, the issue here, Stephen, you're right. The Action SA is not there because they're unfortunately not in the National Assembly. Look, the Democratic Alliance, maybe they didn't want to share the stage with the fellow opposition members, or maybe, it could have been an issue of logistics. You never know. But ultimately, though, the Democratic Alliance, apparently, according to Julius Malema, is not opposed, in principle, to lead the motion of no confidence against President Cyril Ramaphosa. So my reading of that is that, yes, they may not be around the table today, but it does mean that they are in support of the actions that were announced earlier today.
Let me be deeply controversial. If Cyril Ramaphosa were leader of the Democratic Alliance today, it would probably increase their share of the vote.
That is quite controversial indeed. Stephen, I've lost my thought, my train of thought. But anyway, so motion of no confidence. What happens from here is that obviously the DA will table this motion of no confidence. We don't know yet when they will likely to do that, though. And then the Speaker, Mapisa Ngakula, will then have to consider whether or not everything is kosher with the motion, and then obviously table it. I'm sure that the opposition parties will obviously want a secret ballot because they think by doing that they may convince some members of the ANC to vote with them. Whether or not that is going to be a reality remains to be seen. Are some members of the ANC so tired of Cyril that they would want him out of the way? The next few weeks and months are going to be very, very interesting because it does seem that the pressure is mounting on the president and is just nowhere to be found, both literally and figuratively.
And he's refused to answer questions, like point blank, refused to answer questions about Phala Phala. I started this conversation by suggesting there were similarities with the situation in 2017. And what saved President Jacob Zuma, as he then was the fact that he could rely on support from the ANC. And this is still, in a way, the fundamental question of South African politics. Can the president rely on the support of the ANC? And I think in a way, it's a different president, but perhaps it's a different ANC from what it was 5 years ago.
Well, not necessarily, because I think, the ANC, remember at the policy conference, there was a discussion around balance of forces and all of those kind of. So in that instance, the ANC would like to see itself as the victim. So you have all of these external forces and all of them going at the ANC. So the only thing that it then does is to rally together and close ranks, right? So even they might be incredibly unhappy with Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of the ANC, maybe even as president of the country. But are they going to allow a motion of no confidence to pass that needs some of their support to pass? I don't know if the ANC is that way inclined because, a motion of no confidence, and if he's impeached, it's not just the president that leaves, it's his entire cabinet. So, can you imagine the uproar as to what happens to our country if that happens? So, I think despite the unhappiness, if they are unhappy with the president, the chances that they would allow this motion of no confidence to pass are very slim.
Patricia de Lille, not at the press conference, didn't respond, apparently, to the correspondence. She is in the President's cabinet. No surprises?
No, not surprised at all, because, of course, as you rightly point out, she is in the President's cabinet, so she would be conflicted in terms of, are you going to support a motion of no confidence that could mean your dismissal as well? Remember, ultimately, these are human beings. They earn a salary, they build up pensions, and all of them are near pension age. So if the president is impeached, the cabinet goes, there might not be any pensions available to them. So, sometimes it's not just the actual politics, but it's also politics of the stomach that come into play.
Perfectly cynical in 2022. Lukhanyo Calata, thank you very much indeed, our politics editor. More news in a moment. Stay with us.